Hello, I'm Odellin. My family said I was a failure. Too quiet, too soft, too invisible to ever matter. They joked behind my back at dinners, called me unemployed, even stripped my name from the company I helped build, and I let them, for years, until the day I walked into the boardroom they thought they controlled and fired them both. But here's the part they never saw coming. What would you have done if your own father called you a mistake, while cashing a paycheck with your signature at the bottom? Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? And more importantly, would you have stayed silent like I did, or would you have spoken sooner? It was almost 7:15 when I stepped out of my car and looked up at the glowing gold lettering of the steakhouse. I paused a second longer than I needed to. My reflection in the glass door told me everything I already knew. I wasn't dressed for this. My blazer was wrinkled from being crumpled in the passenger seat. My heels didn't match. I hadn't even had time to brush the lint off my slacks, but I walked in anyway. The hostess smiled politely, a little too politely, and led me through the restaurant. "They're already seated," she said, with a trace of something in her voice. Pity? Curiosity? The table was long, too long for a family dinner. Dark wood, high-backed chairs. Everyone was there. Mom in pearls, Dad in his golf jacket, my older brother Nathan checking his phone, and my sister Isolde in her usual soft pink cashmere, surrounded by her orbit of admiration. I got a few glances, a few quick nods. Nobody stood to greet me. The seat left for me? It was at the very end, near the restrooms, just past the swinging door that let out kitchen noise every time a server walked through. I slid into it without comment. Then I noticed the napkins. Everyone had a cloth napkin folded into a neat triangle, embroidered in gold thread with their name. Isolde's looked like it had been steamed. Even my father's, said Gregory. But mine? It was a single sheet of paper towel. Not even a proper paper napkin, just a cheap, torn-off square, folded in half and dropped next to the plate. I stared at it a second too long. No one said a word, not even a joke, just silence. That was the crueler part. I smiled and left it there. The waiter came by to take drink orders. I asked for water with lemon. "Still staying sober?" Nathan said with a chuckle. "Good on you, sis." That stung more than it should have. The conversation shifted to careers, inevitably. It always did. Isolde lit up. "My firm's finalizing an acquisition," she said, lifting her wine glass. 50 million domestic and foreign assets. They're trusting me to lead the client presentation next week. Everyone applauded like they were in church. "That's our girl," Dad said, beaming. "Some of us build legacies." Then he turned toward me. "And some of us, well, try." It wasn't just the words, it was the pause before try. Like he had considered softer phrasing and rejected it on purpose. I didn't respond. I folded the paper towel once more and set it neatly to the side. Isolde leaned toward me. "Well, at least you've got all this free time. Must be nice, honestly. Not everyone's made for the grind." More laughter, polite, controlled. Even Mom smiled, though she quickly redirected, "Anyway, Nathan, how's the renovation coming along on your backyard deck?" I took a sip of water. Let the coolness sit on my tongue. They thought I was jobless. They had thought so for months now. After I left my last position, quietly on my terms, I didn't correct their assumptions. I let them believe what they whispered. She's drifting. Maybe she's on unemployment. She was never as driven as Isolde. Let them think. Because what I was building was the very floor they were standing on. I looked around that table. Cherrywood, fine china, a bottle of wine that cost more than my first paycheck out of college. The air smelled like truffle butter and arrogance. And they didn't even realize. They were eating in one of the businesses I owned. The server returned with the check, placing the leather billfold beside my father. Isolde snatched it. No, I got this. Don't worry, Dad. One day Odellin can treat us, once she's back on her feet." Everyone laughed again, short, controlled, like a sitcom laugh track. I looked up at the server. "No need," I said. "It's already paid for." Isolde blinked. "Paid for?" I nodded. "House account." Dad frowned. "House account? What do you mean?" I picked up the crumpled paper towel, held it between two fingers, then set it gently back down. I met each of their eyes one by one. "The house you're sitting in." I pressed the napkin down gently, then stood, nodding to the server as I passed him. I didn't wait for another comment, or even for their reactions to settle. I walked out before anyone could summon the nerve to ask a real question. The night air outside was cool against my skin. I pulled my coat tighter as I crossed the street to my car, keys already in hand. The streets of downtown Atlanta were alive with laughter from other tables, clinking glasses, headlights streaking by. I slid into the driver's seat and closed the door, letting the silence drop like a curtain between me and all of them. As I drove, I didn't turn the radio on. I didn't call anyone. I just let the city move past my windows. My fingers rested on the steering wheel, still remembering the texture of that embroidered napkin, the way it felt against my fingertips, like silk dipped in irony. A red light caught me just outside the industrial district, where the shine of downtown turned into dull concrete and faded signage. My eyes shifted left, and there it was, still standing, the warehouse. It hadn't changed much. The paint on the siding was peeling worse than it used to. The windows had been upgraded, but the bones? Same as they were 15 years ago. The same bones I'd staked everything on. I pulled over. The parking lot was empty at this hour, the kind of quiet that hums. I stayed in the car, engine idling, and let my mind rewind. That building had once been everything. When I was 23, I signed the lease with what little savings I had from tutoring and part-time gigs. The space was bare, just old cement floors and a leaky roof. But it was mine. I turned it into my launch pad. I had this vision. Logistics automation, software that could track, optimize, predict delays before they happened. But I knew no one would take me seriously. Not with my name, not at that age. So I created a fake consulting firm and used that name to pitch. Built everything from scratch, coded all night, taught myself server management, cold emailed companies while working double shifts. One Sunday dinner back then, I told my family about it. I remember Isolde's reaction like it was yesterday. She smirked, fork paused midair and said, "What is this, like nerd fiction? Sounds like something out of a B-list sci-fi movie." Dad didn't even look up from his glass. "You need to think about a real career, honey. Something steady. HR would be a great fit for you. You're organized." They didn't ask questions, just moved on. I laughed along with them that night, but when I got back to the warehouse, I cried for 20 minutes on the concrete floor, then kept writing code. Months later, I landed my first real contract with a major freight company out of the Carolinas. They didn't care who I was. They liked results. The system worked. But when I shared a sanitized version of the data, out of naive pride, Isolde took it, dressed it up, rebranded it. She presented it to her company like it was her brainstorm. I didn't find out until Thanksgiving. I walked into the living room and saw my dad toasting her in front of the family. "To Isolde," he said, "for saving the project at her firm. She's got a mind like a general." No mention of me, no footnote, no wink, just erased. I stood there, holding a pie I'd spent 4 hours making, and felt my face flush. Mom clapped. Nathan high-fived her. I sat in the corner and kept quiet. That was the moment it shifted. Not just that I was invisible, but that they were rewriting the story and leaving me out. I didn't correct them. I didn't pull out the emails, the screenshots, the code with my digital signature. I filed everything. Quietly. Permanently. I promised myself that if I ever got to tell the story again, it would be on my terms and with receipts. My eyes came back to the warehouse in front of me. It was no longer a shell. It now housed a shipping startup, one of several under my holding company. I didn't use my name on most things. I learned early it was better to be underestimated. But the signature on that lease? It was mine. The building they dismissed, I owned. And every paycheck my father and sister earned passed through systems I'd written in that very warehouse. They had no idea the jobless girl they mocked still signed the lease on every office they worked in. I left the parking lot without turning my head again. The warehouse faded into the mirror like it never mattered to anyone but me. The drive home was quiet, just the sound of tires slicing pavement, and my thoughts looping back to the way Isolde had looked at me when I said, "house account." She looked like a magician whose trick had just failed in front of a sober crowd. It gave me more peace than I thought it would. When I got home, I didn't bother unpacking my purse. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of water, and let the silence settle. The walls of my condo didn't echo with laughter, but at least they didn't echo with judgment either. I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter and went to bed. At 6:38 a.m., I woke to the sound of buzzing. Ping, ping, ping. The screen lit up before I touched it. 27 unread messages in the family group chat. My thumb hovered over it. I already knew what I'd find. That familiar gut pull before opening something you didn't ask for but couldn't ignore. I tapped. Isolde. Was that a flex or a cry for help? Dad. She's always had a flair for drama. That's why she couldn't hold down a real job. Mom. Don't be harsh. She meant well, I think. Isolde. Or she's having another one of her breakdowns. The last word hit like a slap. Breakdown. That was the label they'd given me years ago when I stopped attending Sunday brunch after working 80-hour weeks. When I missed a wedding because I was flying back from Seattle with a signed merger contract in my briefcase. Breakdown. My eyes didn't even blink. I just pressed down on the message thread and saved screenshots. No response, no defense, just silence. Not out of weakness, but out of strategy. Then my phone buzzed again. Different chat. Liam, my nephew, Liam. Hey, Aunt O, I saw the group chat this morning. I think it's wrong. I just wanted you to know I'm on your side. I paused. My chest tightened, but not from hurt. Something gentler. Something like relief. Another message came through. Liam. Also, Dad said you'd never see this, but I saw it and thought you should. Attached, a screenshot, a private side chat. Isolde to her husband. Don't worry, once Dad retires, the VP spot is mine. No way HR or the board takes O'Dellin seriously. She's just the quiet one who shows up at galas. I read it twice, then once more, slowly. The quiet one. That's what they'd decided I was. Not the founder, not the strategist, just someone who posed nicely in family photos and picked neutral nail polish. I texted Liam back. You did the right thing, thank you. No emojis, no hearts, just truth. Then I went into the family group chat settings, scrolled to the bottom and hit Leave Conversation. It didn't ask for a reason, neither did I. I poured myself a second glass of water, then sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. I didn't even need to think. 2. Assistant, Emory subject, Board Consolidation, Phase 1. Attached, Senior Personnel List. I read each name twice. Franklin Aldridge. Senior Logistics Director, Isolde Aldridge. External Partnerships, VP Herman Aldridge, Interim President. All three shared one thing in common. They still thought the boardrooms they walked into were theirs by right. They didn't know I'd been the one who funded the last round of bridge financing. They didn't know that the holding company they answered to was me. And they sure as hell didn't know that by next Tuesday, their keycards would stop working. I didn't wait until Tuesday. By Sunday night, I was already at my desk, the city outside my window dim and settled, like the calm that arrives before a necessary storm. I leaned back, pulled my laptop closer, and opened a private browser window, one no one could trace. My fingers typed the access portal to Reynolds Human Capital, a consultancy firm known for its corporate culture rehabilitation. What most didn't know? Reynolds was mine. Quietly acquired years ago through one of the lesser-known subsidiaries buried in my portfolio. Subject: Executive Division Culture Review, Immediate Initiation, to Julia Reynolds. Body: Initiate full audit of all staff under Franklin Aldridge and Isolde Aldridge. Anonymous complaint collection to begin within 24 hours. All findings to be routed through board compliance folder marked Phase 1. No signatures, no flags. Let the numbers speak. By Monday afternoon, the inbox for internal grievances began to flood. Some were only a few lines long. Others read like diary entries after years of being unheard. He tells us we're lucky to have a family-run firm, but we're not family. We're disposable. She called me grandma in heels in front of the interns. If you're not related to them, you don't get promoted. Once, during a holiday party, Isolde joked, "Some people age out of relevance and don't realize it." I was standing right there. I had just turned 50. I read them all. Not once, 3 times. Each line scratched an old scar I thought had healed. They'd built a little monarchy inside something I'd designed to be fair, flat, and functional. And now that monarchy would collapse, brick by smug brick. Tuesday morning, I was sipping my second coffee when the internal notification dinged. Mandatory compliance review meeting scheduled, Isolde Aldridge. Time, 11:30 a.m. Location, conference room 3C assigned. Officer, Amanda Roth, senior consultant, Reynolds HC. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. By 11:15, Isolde's heels echoed down the marble hallway. I watched through the opaque glass from my office as she walked in, chin high, lips pinched. 5 minutes later, my father barged into my workspace without knocking. "What is this?" his voice boomed. "Isolde just got pulled into some HR ambush. What the hell are you pulling here, O'Dellin?" I set my coffee down slowly, the steam still rising from the rim. "It's a board initiative. You know how everyone's talking about transparency these days." He glared at me like I'd slapped him. "You think this is funny? You really think putting your own sister under a microscope is the way to prove yourself?" I folded my hands calmly on the desk. "I think it's overdue, but you're welcome to file a formal objection. That's how process works now, not hallway tantrums." He looked like he wanted to throw something, but there was nothing in reach that wouldn't make him look ridiculous. He stormed out. The door didn't quite slam, but the tremor in the frame stayed with me. That afternoon, I sent one last directive to Emery, my legal aide and one of the few people in the company who knew exactly who I was behind the curtain. "Leave the folder on the VP conference table. No explanation. Label it Preliminary Findings, Ethics Concerns. Make sure it's the kind with the red tab. No signatures, no commentary, just presence." That night, the rumors started spreading before the folder was even opened. And I knew that was the point. If they thought this was personal, wait until the board finds out what they've been hiding. I didn't sleep much the night before the anniversary event. By the time sunlight slid across the hardwood floors of my condo, I was already dressed. Navy silk blouse, dark slacks, hair in a neat bun. Nothing loud, nothing that begged attention, just clean lines and quiet presence, the same way I'd built everything they refused to see. The elevator ride up to the rooftop garden felt longer than usual. I could hear chatter above, faint strains of music, light jazz, as always. My heels clicked against the tiled path leading to the reception, but no one turned. Not one head tilted to acknowledge me. It was easier that way, maybe. Rows of white chairs faced a stage trimmed with gold and navy drapery. Screens flanked both sides, looping a slideshow of the company's journey through time. I found an empty seat near the back, not too far, not too close, and crossed my legs slowly, letting my eyes scan the screen. My designs were there, the interface I built at 23, the mock-up I coded in that dusty warehouse when I still believed they'd be proud. But under the images, bold white text, Strategic Initiative by Franklin Aldridge and Isolde Aldridge. I didn't even blink. The montage ended. The CEO took the stage. Some board members followed. Applause. Polite chuckles at old office photos. Then came the microphone exchange, and my father stepped forward. He hadn't aged much in the face, but his voice had grown even more confident, like decades of being applauded had molded it deeper. "I want to thank everyone for being part of this legacy," he said. "It's not every day a family gets to build something that lasts." He paused for effect, smiling down at the rows of employees. "And I especially want to thank my daughter Isolde for her strategic brilliance, her vision, and her leadership during the company's growth years." Polite applause again. Isolde gave her best modest smirk. Then he glanced toward the back where I sat. "And to my younger daughter, O'Dellin, I know you're still trying to find your place. Keep going." He chuckled lightly, like it was meant to be encouraging. Someone near me made a soft aw noise. Someone else laughed. Not cruelly, worse, like they pitied me. I stood. I didn't rush, didn't stumble. I walked down the side aisle and kept going until the air changed, until the music and clapping were far behind me. I pushed open the heavy double doors, stepped into the lower courtyard, and finally exhaled. Keep going. I sat on the curb in my suit, just far enough from the party to be alone, but not so far I couldn't hear the echoes of their celebration. That line, It wasn't just a dismissal. It was a summary of every interaction I'd had with them for the past 20 years. Still trying to find your place. As if I'd been wandering, not building, I stared at the fountain in the center of the courtyard. The water trickled softly. Above, string lights blinked into early evening. I thought about driving home, packing a bag, and disappearing. I could. I had the funds, the silence, and the anonymity. But just then, a voice broke the stillness. Near the stone archway where two corridors met, a young intern, Kayla, I remembered her name, was being scolded by a middle-aged executive. "I told you, you don't just knock on a VP door during a logistics meeting," he snapped. "There's a chain of command. You're not at college anymore." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. She'd been the one who asked me last month about vendor integrations. Bright eyes, fast learner. Now, she turned and walked away, hugging a file folder like armor. I watched her go. I saw myself. The same walk I used to make, back when I had ideas and no one cared. Back when I got mocked for asking irrelevant questions in rooms I wasn't invited into. Back when I thought maybe they were right. I looked at the lights again, and I clenched my fists. I'd let them take credit, take space, take my name. I'd let them box me out and convince the world I was still figuring things out. But not anymore. Not after tonight. I stood slowly, brushed the dust from my pants, and turned toward the hallway that led back inside. If silence made them bold, then maybe it was time they heard my voice. If silence made them bold, then maybe it was time they heard my voice. Monday morning arrived with a deceptive calm. The skies over Midtown were a pale stretch of gray, and the city buzzed with its usual oblivion. I parked on the 4th level of the executive garage, same as always. Same space, same key fob. But today, I wasn't just showing up. I stepped out of the car, straightened my blazer, and tapped the Bluetooth in my ear. "Begin phase 2, I said, walking toward the service elevator. Quietly. "Yes, Miss Aldridge," my assistant replied without hesitation. As the elevator doors closed behind me, the system began what we called a silent lockdown. No warning banners, no system-wide announcements, just selective access changes in the back end. It was surgical, clean. By the time I reached my office, the IT security team had already begun implementing the protocol. I stood at my window and watched the courtyard far below, where employees were just trickling in. None of them knew that by lunch, certain doors wouldn't open for certain people. I logged into the admin panel. At the top of the list, Isolde Aldridge and Franklin Aldridge, both flagged with Executive Security Override Revoked. I didn't smile. This wasn't about revenge. This was about control, reclaiming what I should never have lost in the first place. At 9:02 a.m., a notification appeared on my screen. Access denied, I. Aldridge HR server login attempt blocked. Then another, access denied, F. Aldridge Financial Archives entry request rejected. I turned toward my assistant, who stood at the edge of the doorway with a tablet in hand. "Make sure their reactions are documented." She nodded once and left the room. By late morning, a ripple was already forming. Isolde had stormed into HR demanding to know why her credentials weren't working. I didn't need to be there. I had logs, timestamps, security footage. I let the data speak. But by noon, retaliation came. My phone buzzed with a flagged message from Internal Affairs. "Urgent possible character defamation attempt attached" was a PDF, unsigned and anonymous, suggesting I had manipulated performance reviews out of emotional instability. It was laced with concern, the kind that hides its claws behind words like unfit and erratic behavior. The file's metadata told me everything. It had been created the night before, on a device registered to Isolde's assistant. I'd seen that laptop's IP address before. It was used to prepare her quarterly reports. Sloppy. I closed the file and stood. I didn't need a meeting. I just needed a hallway. She didn't see me coming at first. Her heels clicked fast down the corridor, chin high, face tight with false calm. When she noticed me, she hesitated, but only for a second. "If you're going to leak fake documents," I said, my voice even, "at least encrypt them better." She blinked, then narrowed her eyes. "You're just bitter Dad didn't choose you." "Did he choose you?" I asked. Or did you just talk louder while I was building everything you stood on? Isolde tilted her head. He never saw you as a leader, Odie. He never even saw you as competition. I took a step closer. No, I said. He never saw. Period. I didn't wait for her rebuttal. I walked away before the sting of my words had even settled. Back in my office, I sat down and typed a final message. To legal, to HR, to the ethics committee. Subject, misconduct findings, full board review required. I didn't copy Isolde. I didn't copy my father. I just clicked send. Then I opened my planner and made a note. Thursday, 10 a.m., full board meeting room 9B. They wouldn't see the meeting invite until it was too late. By the time they realized the meeting wasn't optional, the boardroom door had already locked behind them. They'd barely taken 2 steps into the conference room before the door clicked behind them. Not a loud sound, just a clean, mechanical lock. The kind that left no doubt it wasn't opening again anytime soon. I was already seated at the head of the long walnut table, the board to my left and legal counsel across. No one said anything. The silence did the work. My father frowned. What's this? Isolde's stilettos slowed as she glanced at the room, eyes darting from one face to another. Another compliance check? She asked, forcing a half smile like it might still charm someone. I motioned calmly toward the frosted glass behind them. The doors are sealed for confidentiality. You'll want to sit. They hesitated, then took seats, heavily. The chairs scraped like warnings. I leaned forward slightly, voice even. Let's begin. I passed a stack of folders to the board secretary. One by one, the members reached for theirs, flipping open the covers. Inside, incorporation records, transfer memos, shell company diagrams. And then the real surprise, my name, majority shareholder. Silence swept the room like a cold wind. My father's jaw clenched. This is nonsense. Is it? I asked, tilting my head. Because the Secretary of State's office in Delaware seems to think otherwise. So does your signature, right there. I pointed, transferring Class B shares to a firm I happen to control. He flipped through the pages faster now, hands trembling just slightly. Isolde hadn't moved. Her fingers hovered over the folder's edge like it might bite. This is a trick, he muttered again, more to himself than anyone else. No, I said, voice steady. This is history. Yours just didn't include me. The air felt dense, still. You could hear breathing, shuffling paper, nothing else, until I reached into the side pocket of my blazer and pressed a slim black remote. Let's review culture, I said. A speaker in the ceiling crackled to life. Then, voices. First Isolde, unmistakably. Half the team's coasting. If you're not family, you don't get a say. Then laughter, her father's voice. Cut the women out of the room. You save time on the back and forth. A board member stiffened. Another looked down at the table, blinking rapidly. I let it play for another 10 seconds. Then I clicked pause. Those were captured 3 months ago. Your quarterly offsite, drinks and all. Someone cleared their throat. I believe the board has applauded the wrong people long enough, I said. Let's take a closer look at what you've really been clapping for. More shuffling. The legal advisor at the far end opened his own folder and pulled out a memo. These statements, and others compiled during our investigation, he said, appear to violate the company's ethics charter. The breaches, when paired with share manipulation and suppression of rightful credit, trigger mandatory contract review under Clause 14. Isolde's face had gone pale. My father leaned back, no longer speaking. That, perhaps, was the loudest sound in the room. The chairman folded his hands. Mr. Aldridge, Miss Aldridge, he said slowly, your resignations are expected before close of business today. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. Isolde's voice cracked. You can't do this. I stood, straightened my blazer. You wanted to erase me to protect your illusion of power, I said, looking at them both. Well, now you'll be erased from the very thing you tried to keep me out of. Then I turned, walked to the door, and nodded once at the assistant waiting outside. The lock clicked open behind me. They had written me out of the company history, so I rewrote the ending. The boardroom air still clung to my clothes when I got back to my office. I didn't sit. I didn't exhale. I walked straight to the window, pulled back the blinds, and stared out at the city skyline like it owed me something. Then I turned back, tapped my assistant's number, and said only this: "Release the statement." 20 minutes later, the press release was everywhere. Headlines read like thunder: "Company to undergo major reform after internal ethics shakeup. New leadership declares zero tolerance for discrimination and nepotism." My name was on it, for the first time, without disguise. Odalyn Aldridge. Hundreds of emails and messages poured in. Former interns, current managers, retired employees, especially women, reached out. Some wrote full paragraphs of thanks. Others simply sent 2 words: "Thank you." It was overwhelming and humbling and long overdue. I scrolled through the mentions online and then I saw it. A side-by-side photo, posted by an ex-employee I barely remembered from the early days. One photo was old, faded, our original founding team standing in the warehouse, all of us grinning in jeans and t-shirts. I was near the back, half obscured by a folding table. The other photo? A cropped version from the same day, but this time with me in the foreground, centered. The caption read, "She built it. They just stood in front of it." It hit harder than anything I'd planned. The post went viral within hours, and with that virality came the desperation. Isolde and my father went live that evening on social media, sitting side by side on a beige sofa trying to look candid. Her makeup was perfect. His tone was performative. "She's been planning this for years," Isolde said, voice almost trembling. "This wasn't about justice. This was revenge." My father followed up with, "Odalyn was always sensitive. She struggled to take feedback. We love her, but she's been twisting this narrative to hurt the company we all built together." I didn't flinch. I didn't post a rebuttal, but others did. Screenshots from internal emails surfaced, leaked anonymously. Whistleblowers came out of the woodwork. Former employees shared stories: unfair demotions, snide remarks, exclusion from key meetings. Patterns emerged. The comments under their video turned against them within an hour. One woman wrote, "I got laid off after I told HR Isolde mocked my stutter. Guess she was as strategic about that too." Another posted, "I was told not to dress too ambitious by her father. This is karma, in real time." I watched it all unfold silently. Then I recorded one short video. I sat at my desk, no lighting crew, no makeup, just me and the lens. "I don't believe in takedowns," I said, "but I do believe in truth. Success built on silence is fragile. I was silent long enough." I didn't include hashtags, no music, no editing. That clip did more than trend. It resonated. Our company stock, which had dipped earlier that week, stabilized, then climbed. Investors appreciated integrity more than denial, and amid it all, something unexpected happened. A delivery arrived at my home address, an old cardboard box, taped carefully, labeled in my mother's handwriting, the handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. Inside, a few family photos, a charm bracelet, and a sealed envelope. The note inside was short, faded, smudged in places, but I could still read it. "Don't let them shrink you to fit their world. You were born to build your own." I sat there for a long time, holding that paper in both hands, feeling her voice echo through the years. Later that night, I placed the note beside a newly framed photo on my office bookshelf, the one from the warehouse, the uncropped version. But this time, I was front and center. I didn't just rewrite the ending. They'd never even imagined this version. 3 months had passed. The office moved differently now, quieter but somehow more alive. Conversations flowed freely. No more hushed whispers in elevators, no more glances over shoulders, just the rhythm of people doing the work and doing it without fear. I walked through the main floor like I had hundreds of times before, but now there were no double takes, no one trying to place me, no mistaken assumptions. Now they knew. There was no cloak anymore, no borrowed title, no pseudonym in the background. I didn't hide behind project founder or majority stakeholder. I simply walked, and they saw me, and I saw them. A man in accounting passed me with a nod and a smile. A woman from facilities management waved, holding up a clipboard like a trophy. Even the intern I'd once guided through her first logistics briefing. She held her head higher now. That intern and I sat together later that week in one of the breakout rooms. She fiddled with the corner of her notepad, tapping her pen as she hesitated. "I thought about leaving," she finally admitted. "After everything that happened, I didn't think people like us had a place here." I looked at her, not as a mentor, not even as a boss, but as someone who remembered exactly what it felt like to question your own place in a room built by others. "I know the feeling," I said softly, "but don't let them teach you to disappear." She blinked quickly, but didn't cry, just nodded and smiled. It was a quiet victory, the kind I used to think didn't count. Turns out, they count the most. As the days passed, the noise surrounding Isolde and my father faded into static. Neither had returned to the industry. My father's consulting legacy evaporated into silence. Isolde tried to launch her own boutique firm, but within weeks, her past followed her name, and potential clients started pulling out. They still blamed me, I'm sure. But now they blamed me from a distance, in shadows, in rooms no longer theirs. At home one evening, I returned to that letter, my mother's words still folded carefully beside my desk. This time, I didn't just read it, I framed it. I hung it right above my computer monitor, next to a new plaque that read, CEO, Odellin Maris. No more initials tucked into email footers. No more edits to other people's speeches. No more seats in the corner of tables I helped build. My name, my place, my voice. There was a quiet peace in those mornings now. I'd arrive before most, slip into my office with a fresh coffee, and pass through the lobby where everything started. That same lobby where, years ago, I'd sat waiting for an interview. Wearing borrowed heels, gripping a resume no one would ask for, while a receptionist glanced right through me. Now, etched into the glass behind that same reception desk, stood a quote. Not a tagline, not a mission statement, just a simple truth. Some of us don't raise our voices. We build rooms where everyone else finally can. Visitors paused when they read it. New hires snapped photos, and I'd pass by, no applause, no announcements, just presence. That was enough. They had written me out of the company history, so I rewrote the ending. And as for the frame they tried to stuff me into, my family tried to shrink me, but I wasn't born to fit their frame. I was born to build new ones.